Hi, my name is Chris Orwig. I'm a photographer, a best-selling author, and I'm on the professional photography faculty at the Brooks Institute in Santa Barbara, California, where we are right now. Welcome back to another episode of our Creative Kickstart series. And in this episode, we're going to ask ourselves, how can we take and make more interesting photographs? You know, one of the things that happens at school is that you sit at a desk like this for a number of years. And as a photographer, getting better is a process. It requires a lot of hard work, a lot of listening, a lot of shooting, a lot of practicing, and eventually, the culmination, the final rite of passage is a portfolio review. And at the portfolio review, what the student does is puts together their best work, his or her best work that is most representative of who they are and of the photographs that they make. At that portfolio review, often we'll have guests come in. One guest, Jay Maisel, came in to review portfolios a number of years ago. Jay is a famous photographer, an amazing photographer, and at that review, he was giving critiques. He was really helping the students understand their work. And Jay is a classic New Yorker. In other words, he's not giving a lot of glowing feedback. Rather, it's to the point, and it's terse, and it's direct. Well, one student had his portfolio reviewed by Jay, and Jay said, you know what, this work it's okay. And in Jay's language, that means it's really, really good. And he got this good review. It's okay. There's even some pictures here that are good. And the student was excited by this review. So he said, well, Jay, okay, well, how then do I make more interesting photographs? Without skipping a beat, Jay just volleys back. Become a more interesting person. And I think that's the perfect response. You know, the photographs that we make eventually, they become autobiographical. They are a reflection of who we are. If we want to make more interesting photographs, we have to become more interesting people. I see this all the time with the photographic students that I work with. Often a student will have good technique, good skills, but perhaps they're lacking in interest. They don't really have that edge. Then there is another student who has good technique, good skill, and they have all of these different interests. They're a fascinating person. Well, all of those things that they're fascinated about, well, they somehow filter into their work. They add an edge, they add an element, they add spice and seasoning to the photographs that they make. So here's the question. The question which we would ask, or I would ask if we were in a classroom, we'd ask someone you're sitting next to, where have you interacted with an artist or photographer or someone who had a lot of interest and you saw those interests come into their work? Oftentimes this is where you see these direct connections. Perhaps like a friend of mine, Chris, he's an amazing surf photographer. Well, he just loves the sport of surfing. He loves being outdoors. He loves traveling the world. Well, that love, that passion, it obviously shows up in his work. And so he's found work which really aligns or is matched with his passions. Then for the action step, well, what can you do in order to develop your own interest, to become a more interesting person? Well, one of the first things that you can do is to become more interested in things. In other words, to really talk to people and ask them lots of questions, or to take classes to develop your interest outside of photography. One of the things that I've discovered is that as I've interacted with different students, those who burn out are the ones who only do photography and nothing else. The ones who really excel and create amazing photographs, they do photography and all of these other things, and eventually they learn how to blend their different passions and interests together. So how can you do that? How can you develop some of your own interests so that you can start creating those pictures that have that extra edge? You know, sometimes that means to photograph things that are really meaningful or really interesting to you. And so what I want you to do is to go out and do that today. Go out and do that this week. Take those pictures which really mean something to you. Also, ask yourself, well, how can I develop some other interests? And what could those be? Perhaps it's like something I've done. I decided to pick up taking the cello or learning the cello, taking cello lessons. Now, I am not good at the cello at all. Yet I've learned some valuable lessons from pursuing this interest. As I've tried to learn how to play the cello, one of the things that my cello teacher told me was this: Chris, you need to make mistakes more boldly. In other words, if you just lightly play a note, you're never going to hit it, but you really have to play it. And it really has to sound bad to find the right spot so that it can sound good. And as you develop these interests, like playing the cello or whatever, that then will filter into your photography. So in other words, in photography, one of the things I've learned is that I need to make more bold mistakes. I really need to go for it. I can't just rely on what I've done in the past. And then by making those bold mistakes, many times that will lead you to making those great and more interesting photographs. Well, in closing, thanks for joining me in this podcast, Creative Kickstart, as we've asked that question, how can we take more interesting photographs? I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.